Kibutsuji Muzan is by far the most ruthless and self-centered character in the world of Demon Slayer, but naturally being the Demon King, not many people could do something about it. However, what if that was not the case? What if in the place of Muzan, there were other demons in that position? What would Akaza do different? Or what would Doma change? And don't even get me started on Kokushibo. This set of what-if scenarios is as exciting as it gets. In each case, we will assume that Muzan is no longer part of the story, and in each scenario, a demon moon is the first human to be turned into a demon over 1,000 years ago. All new Demon Kings kill the Doctor as soon as they are administered the experimental treatment, and thus none of them has conquered the sun. Each and every single one of them is looking for either the blue spider lily or a demon that has conquered the sun in order to consume and thus be able to step out in the sun without disintegrating into dust. And with that out of the way, let's get to the exciting part of this video. Who should we start with? Well, let's spin the wheel to find out. Beginning with the Upper Moon 2, Doma. As we all know, Doma is a psychopath that feels absolutely no emotions. He is often portrayed laughing just so he can show that he feels something and thus hide the fact that he is completely empty on the inside. A thing, however, that makes even Doma crack a genuine smile is when people press that subscribe button. After all, this means you get the best anime content there is on YouTube. Anyone would be happy with that, right? But seriously now, the most vital and pivotal trait of Doma in this scenario is the fact that Doma loves eating women. Because of that, two exciting changes happen. First and foremost, Akaza is either killed or never becomes an Upper Moon in the first place. Doma would either kill him for his mindset of refusing to hurt women, or Akaza would simply refuse to continue serving under this maniac. As a result, there are two empty spaces in the Upper Moon ranks. Both Doma's and Akaza's places are empty for the taking, and thus they are covered by new characters we did not see in the original story of Demon Slayer. When it comes to Kane's death, we will assume that she still dies, because after all, even though Doma is the Demon King now, he still craves the flesh of women, and thus goes after Kane. On Rengoku's case now, he might still die if the new Demon King taking the place of Akaza follows the same path as Akaza. Or this might just not be the case, and thus Rengoku makes it out alive during the Mugen Train arc. Another important change would have to do with Doma's relationship with Kokushibo. You see, in the original story, Muzan and Kokushibo were something like partners in crime, mostly because their goals and ideals matched. But in this version of the story, Kokushibo absolutely refuses to play by Doma's rules. You see, Doma is an absolute savage that hunts and eats women simply for the fun of it. Even though this somewhat bothers Kokushibo, the thing that absolutely infuriated him was the fact that Doma had everyone in his ranks worship him. After all, Doma has the tendency of wanting people to worship him in order to cover the void he feels inside his heart. Kokushibo absolutely refused to do that, and thus why the rift between them was created. But since Kokushibo is arguably the strongest weapon Doma has in his ranks, he allows him to do as he pleases without further arguing with him. Another significant change compared to the original story is the fact that Doma even has a cult with women worshipping him. He seeks this validation, and thus, instead of trying to hide in the shadows like Muzan was doing, Doma is much more careless, which further infuriates Kokushibo. When it comes to Doma's new strength, on the other hand, being the Demon King means that all of his powers would skyrocket, but most importantly, his blood demon art would be even more broken. Doma's ice output would be much greater, to a point that no one would even be able to get close to him without freezing to death. The only counter to this ability, and the only way for humans to get close, is through sun breathing. That's the natural enemy of the ice. Thus, the only major characters who could finish off Doma would be Yoriichi and Tanjiro. For the sake of the story, we will assume that Yoriichi fails to fully defeat Doma, just like it happened with Muzan in the original story. Because of that, we still have a final battle in the end of Demon Slayer, in which the Demon Slayers still win. But in this timeline, Tanjiro plays a much bigger role due to his sun breathing. Let's move to the next Upper Moon. Nakime. Despite being stoic and calm, Nakame is actually cruel and ruthless. She does not really speak much, so in terms of the Upper Moon ranks, and whether someone would not join because of her, nothing really changes. Plus, she herself became an Upper Moon only after Gyutaro, Daki, Gyoko, and Hantengu were killed. So once again, the original Upper Moon 6 we had in episode 1 remained the same in this scenario as well. When it comes to her encounter with Yoriichi around 1,000 years ago, Nakame even manages to escape from Yoriichi relatively easier than Muzan. That's because her blood demon art art that normally creates an infinite castle that she can control and wrap as she wants is now even crazier. She can forcefully take people inside her dimension in the blink of an eye. Because of that, when Yoriichi encountered her, as soon as Yoriichi went for the neck, she manages to create the Infinity Castle and forcefully takes Yoriichi inside as well. Even if that were to happen, Yoriichi would obviously not even receive a scratch from her, no matter how many tricks Nakime would try. But the purpose this serves instead is that because of this ability, Nakime can now escape from Yoriichi much easier than Muzan, and thus makes it out alive in this encounter. On to the Infinity Castle arc, where the Demon King makes her move in order to go after Nezuko, who has just conquered the sun. The important difference in this version of the story is that Nakime can escape the attacks that are thrown her way much easier than Muzan, as her manipulation of her own dimension offers an easy way out whenever she sees fit. Because of that, Nakime manages to reach Nezuko without much trouble. Nakime eats Nezuko, and thus the Demon Slayers are now defeated. Moving on, the next upper moon is Akaza. Akaza is basically the polar opposite of Doma. He refuses to kill women, and even more than that, now that he's in a position of power, he even commands the upper moons to never kill women again unless they have to, aka being attacked by a strong Hashira. Akaza is now much stronger, faster, and more agile. During his encounter with Yoriichi, he barely manages to escape due to his enhanced agility and speed. Even though Yoriichi is still faster than him, the difference is not that big, and thus Akaza manages to barely escape. When it comes to Doma, he does not listen to Akaza's command of staying away from women, and even though he managed to restrain himself for quite a few years, he cannot hold back against Inosuke's mother, as not only was he in love with her, she also figured out that Doma is a demon. Akaza lets it go by, as her escape could blow the identity of Doma as a demon. Inosuke's story is developing in the same way it did in the original story, but Doma is not done yet. He also gets a pass with killing Kane, and this is among the rules of Akaza, with his demon moons being able to kill strong female Hashiras to protect themselves. However, Akaza is pissed with Doma, and the next thing he does would be his last. Doma, having tasted women's flesh, cannot restrain himself and goes on a killing spree, killing and consuming women. Akaza being connected to all of his demons, he instantly sees that. He gets furious and immediately kills Doma, meaning that similarly to the case when Doma was the Demon King, two positions are now open in the upper moons. One of them is the Demon King, while the other is killed. When it comes to Akaza's relationship with his upper moons, Kokushibo respects his ideals and his mentality of wanting to be the strongest. As a result, the two of them have a good understanding between them in this version of the story. In the final arc now, Akaza, similarly to Doma's Demon King case, is also defeated, as his new enhanced blood demon art does not really allow him to make the difference and find Nezuko before being killed. Let's spin that wheel again. This time around, we have Gyutaro. If Gyutaro becomes the new Demon King, that would naturally mean that Daki would receive a special treatment as well. She gets extra blood and grows many times stronger over the years. In this version of the story, Daki is the Upper Moon 2, overtaken only by Kokushibo. With Gyutaro becoming the Demon King, his blood demon art becomes many times stronger. His blood manipulation becomes so advanced that he regenerates way better and even faster than Muzan. He can use his own blood to attack, and within a split second, replenish the used blood, meaning that in this version, Gyutaro does not have any limitations with how much blood he can use. In his encounter with Yoriichi, however, his set of abilities mean little against the Demon Slayer god, Yoriichi. In the previous case, we analyzed all demons had a unique ability that let them escape from the reach of Yoriichi. Not only that, but Gyutaro's mentality does not allow him to escape, and thus stays to fight. Even if he tried to escape, Yoriichi would still catch him. The two of them clash, and as you would expect, Gyutaro stands no chance. Yoriichi defeats him, and the story of Demon Slayer never actually happens. But moving on. How about if his sister Daki was the Demon King? Similarly to Gyutaro's case, Daki's sibling would get special treatment, and thus receive additional blood from the Demon King. If Daki were to live longer, Gyutaro would get to be the Upper Moon too. Well, the sure thing is that if Daki were to remain the Demon King, Doma would again be killed in this version of the story as well. I mean, think about it. The thought of a woman telling him to do what would surely not sit well with him and would probably drive him insane. He would most likely do something stupid, and Daki would kill him. But will Daki actually make it that far in the story, or not? You see, her blood demon art normally allows her to create flower pattern obi sashes from her flesh, as well as freely manipulating them at will. Even if that ability gets strengthened and powered up, it would still be no match for Yoriichi, and it would in no way help her escape. Yoriichi defeats her, and the Demon Slayer story does not even progress further down the line. Spinning the wheel again to see our next Demon King. This time we have Hantengu. Hantengu becoming the Demon King would mean that his already overpowered blood demon art becomes even more insane. You see, being able to split yourself into clones is not to be taken lightly. If he were to be the Demon King, this move would become even crazier, possibly allowing Hantengu to create more and even stronger clones. When it comes to the Upper Moon ranks, either Nakame or another unknown demon is promoted into the ranks of the Upper Moons in the place of Hantengu that is now the Demon King. In his encounter with Yoriichi, he makes it out alive due to his ability to split himself into many clones, even though Yoriichi has access to the transparent world, and thus this makes it very difficult for Hantengu to hide. Being the Demon King, the additional strength he receives on top of the fact that Yoriichi needs some time to understand how Hantengu's abilities work, and thus what it takes to completely finish him off gives Hantengu the vital opening to make his escape. Not many changes happen in the normal story, with the exception that during the Swordsmith Village arc, Hantengu does not bother to join Gyoko. After all, now he's the Demon King and can command others to do his bidding, so he sends another demon along with Gyoko, and pretty much the same things happen with the two demons being defeated in the Swordsmith Village. The most important change that happens in this version of the story, though, is during the final arc. You see, here the Demon Slayers have no idea why no matter how hard they try to kill him, no matter how many times they slash his neck, Hantengu keeps coming back. You see, in order for Hantengu to die, the Demon Slayers need to kill the small version of him. The only one who can pinpoint that fact is Tanjiro due to his sharp nose. However, with the help of Nakame, Hantengu is very well hidden and protected at all times. Only after Nakame is defeated, the Demon Slayers stand some chance. Even so, this observation comes very late in the battle, and most of the Demon Slayers are already defeated. Hantengu comes out victorious and manages to eat Nezuko, thus conquering the sun. On to the last 3 Upper Moons. We now get Gyoko. Together with being the Demon King, his power also drastically increases. The range in which he can teleport becomes much wider. His pots are much more durable to attacks and do not break easily. It takes even elite Demon Slayers much effort to even break one of them. Gyoko also becomes much faster and more agile, a trait that, as we will analyze shortly, proves to have saved his life on 2 separate occasions. When Gyoko is faced against Yoriichi, his teleportation, with the help of his pots, proved to be crucial. This ability gave the necessary split second for Gyoko to escape. As soon as Gyoko teleports in one pot, Yoriichi goes in demon mode and starts breaking his pots. But Gyoko manages to move just in time. After all, no matter how quick Yoriichi is, teleportation will always be faster than normal movement, right? Even if that movement is executed by the strongest and fastest Demon Slayer in history. Next, not many changes happen in Tanjiro's era, but a thing that does change is the fact that Demon King Gyoko is untouchable. Similarly to Hantengu's Demon King case, Gyoko does not go to the Swordsmith Village, and instead another demon is sent there. We will assume that both Hantengu and this other demon are defeated. In the final arc, Gyoko not only manages to escape all attacks from the Demon Slayers attacking him, he can also teleport to way bigger distances, allowing him to scan the area quicker and locate Nezuko's position. Without much trouble, Gyoko eats Nezuko, and the Demon King has now become truly immortal. Get ready, because we are getting closer to the most epic one. Will we get to it now? Well, not yet, because we got another exciting what-if scenario. This time, Kaigaku. Kaigaku being the Demon King means that Jigoro is no longer his master, and thus he does not end his life when Kaigaku becomes a demon. In this version of the story, Kaigaku and Zenitsu, despite having similar abilities, don't know each other. But wait, because a small question mark arises from this situation. You see, Kaigaku was normally a demon able to use breathing forms, but in this version of the story, Kaigaku was born and turned into a demon before Yoriichi was born, and thus creating the breathing techniques. But for the sake of making the scenario more exciting, we will assume that Kaigaku learns to use thunder breathing after Yoriichi develops the technique. Someone might ask, if it were that simple, why didn't Muzan learn to use breathing forms then? Well, that might purely be due to the pride and ego of Muzan not wanting to use a power that humans rely on to fight. But for Kaigaku to make it that far and learn how to use breathing techniques, he needs to first survive against Yoriichi. Since Kaigaku's blood demon art is electrokinesis, this means that his speed is no joke. For this ability alone, we will assume that he manages to escape against Yoriichi. After the fight, Kaigaku gets a human on his side and has him to teach him breathing forms. The Demon King can now use thunder breathing. The plot during Tanjiro's era pretty much remains the same, but how about the final arc? Well, in the final arc, a Demon King being able to use breathing forms surely takes the Demon Slayers by surprise. However, if we compare him with the likes of Muzan and his biokinesis blood demon art, we believe that Kaigaku is still weaker than him. Kaigaku is faster, but overall weaker, or in the very least, around the same strength as Muzan. Because of that, he also loses in the final fight, just like it happened with Muzan. Finally, the moment you all waited for, Kokushibo as the Demon King. How would this turn out? Hear me out. For this to make sense, we will assume that Yoriichi is born in the same era as Kokushibo. After all, the two of them are twin brothers. Kokushibo, similarly to the original story, is envious and jealous of his brother's strength. Shortly after becoming the new Demon King, Kokushibo's strength skyrockets. Plus, he can obviously use his moon-breathing techniques, as well as the mark and transparent world that he learned how to use as a human. A few years after polishing his new powers, Kokushibo and Yoriichi come face to face. Here, Kokushibo has no intention to run. The two brothers clash, and this time around, the gap in their strength is much smaller compared to the original story, where Yoriichi was able to destroy Kokushibo with 1 or 2 slashes. Even if Kokushibo is now much stronger than he used to be, we believe that Yoriichi is still stronger than him. This fight is the definition of insane. With a high degree of difficulty, Yoriichi manages to kill his brother, and thus, the Demon King is no more. Even though we stated that Yoriichi is stronger than Demon King Kokushibo, at the end of the day, this might be debatable. Do you think that Yoriichi or Demon King Kokushibo is stronger? Let us know in the comments down below. Well, if Kokushibo manages to come out on top, something very unlikely in our opinion, then that means that the Demon Slayers are done for. Kokushibo completely annihilates the Demon Slayers, and Demon King Kokushibo remains alive for all eternity.